Good morning once again. Got a full house today. I just held a 2-month-old baby, Laura's baby, and Ember. I can't tell you. That brings back memories because my mother had 4 extra kids long after the 3 boys. So, that's when men were men. They changed real diapers, having to wring them out in the toilet and all that stuff, and not these throwaways, but it's just a reminder. Smelling baby like that, they smell so good, so fresh. There's nothing like it. I know it sounds strange, but let me give you the, I forget, the announcements. Dean's shoulder surgery has been scheduled, been postponed, and she had everything ready. She had done all her preventative maintenance, microwave meals and all that. And then something came up with her heart, and she's got to get checked out. So maybe it'll be by the end of the next month, possibly, but she has to see the doctor. So it's been postponed. We know that Andy Jr. is here, and he had a tough time. At one point, they gave him some medication, and he passed out. So there's a bunch of people in the room trying to revive him and all that, and he did, and he got revived, and so he's doing well. And ladies' night, since it was postponed, is coming this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. out back on Grape Road. Let Trish know, and we get to keep the tables up today. Okay? Heavenly Father, thank you for this time in your word. I just pray the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that we gain from this is the real gold, silver, and precious stones. The reality of it, your wisdom. And I just thank you for understanding your plan today in this dispensation, and wish for more opportunities to preach about it. Amen. 2 Thessalonians Lesson number 18. Let me read you the first in 2 Thessalonians 1, verses 7 through 9. And to you who are troubled, rest with us when the Lord Jesus shall be revealed from heaven with his mighty angels, in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God, and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, who shall be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power. Now today we're going to focus on verse 9, but I have to give you some review now. Again, 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 is talking about this time period that I've been talking about. The day of the Lord, the tribulation, has more ink on it than any other topic in the Bible, even salvation. So the flight path of Second Advent, we talked about he's going to come down in the air. There's going to be a fire breathing from out of his mouth. He's burning everything as he goes along, and he comes down the west coast of the Mediterranean, hangs left below the Dead Sea, and then goes up to Jericho. And it's so number one, he comes out of the third heaven. That's the first thing. And that's where he beats them up there. He establishes the government up there. The second advent starts with him cleansing the heavens. No, we know Satan and his angels are up there. And they watch us down here. It's uncanny because when the thing that beat Satan was what we preached, the gospel of the grace of God, the preaching of Jesus Christ according to the revelation of the mystery. Now, do you think he might be angrier with people that know this? Do you have any doubt of that? How many other Christians have you tried to talk to and tried to explain this, showing the verses, and they don't want to hear it? Now, I'm not trying to get on that jag. He's reclaiming the government of the heavens. 2, then from there he comes down to earth from the second heaven. This is Revelation chapter 12. And when he comes down to earth, he comes in flaming fire and comes in power and great glory. 3, he comes down to Palestine, and he starts up on the north of Israel. If I had a map of Israel here, it'd be up here by Syria, by Turkey. He comes down the Mediterranean coast on the western coast. We call it the West Bank. And he comes all the way down to the Sinai Peninsula, right by the Dead Sea or Salt Sea, and then he goes left, and then he comes back up the Sinai Peninsula to the eastern side, on the eastern side of the Jordan River. He crosses the Jordan River, he comes over to Jerusalem, where the Mount of Olives is, and from here he goes out and fights in the valley of Megiddo, the Battle of Armageddon. So, this flight path, this day of his vengeance, this is the great and terrible day of the Lord in Joel chapter 2, verse 31, which says, "The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord." Terrible. You get the word terrorist from this word. Who are we plagued? Who is the world plagued by? There's a certain religion that wants to take over every nation on the earth because they were told, they think their God told them to do that. Now, most of the people that are this particular religion don't want to do that. But there's a large group of people that's been doing it for a long time. It's all the way back to Genesis 16. Israel's going to live in sight of his brethren, and there's all those Arab states and all that around there, and they all hate the real Lord. They all hate the Lord, the real Lord. It will be a terrifying experience to go through. We're not going to go through that prophesied time period. Okay? We're not going to go through that. How do I know? Because it says so in Paul's epistles. If you follow Paul, you're following Christ, as the verses say. Hebrews 10:31. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. How many of you had that thought? What if God were here and I tripped and I fell into his hands? Would we have to worry? It's the wrong dispensation. What I'm talking about is going on over here in the ages to come, after this dispensation is over with. I know we talk about this all the time, but you never know who's watching or who might be interested in this. This will be a day, as these verses say, of taking vengeance, a recompense. He is going to pay back his enemies. Remember when we talked about this? How do you get rid of your enemies? If you're going to be free, you must do two things. One, break the bonds and shackles of your enemy. Two, then you have to get rid of the enemy. Neutralize, nullify. There's a point in here where they have a battle with Satan, and Satan loses about 5/6 of his people, and he runs back up into the mountains. Okay? But that's not the battle at Armageddon. And the Lord doesn't simply deliver Israel and the world from the clutches of Satan. He destroys them. So the Lord, one, he delivers them. Two, he avenges himself against his enemies. And three, that is the flaming fire taking vengeance. Now, if I do this next week, you're going to see the land he burns, it turns like he cleanses it thoroughly, and it looks like the Garden of Eden behind him. Okay, if I get to those verses next week. And when he comes, that whole expanse takes about 2.5 days. This comes out of Hosea 6, which says, "After 2 days will he revive us, and the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight." Man of war. When the Lord comes in that day, the title that he comes with is the man of war, taking vengeance on them that know not God. This man of war concept is very important. Last week we talked, I want you to go to Exodus 15, by the way. So in Exodus 15, it's the first time you see that word, man of war. Let me see here. It's the first time it's used. The Lord is a man of war. Now, this one's on your outline here. The Lord is his name. The next passage looks toward what we read in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains are also drowned in the Red Sea. So Moses parts the Red Sea. They go across on dry ground, and the waters come back in, and they're flooded. They drown, right? Okay. I want you to see something, though. Hold on a second here. Where am I at here? In Isaiah 42, verse 13 on your outline, it says, "The Lord shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry, yea, roar. He shall prevail against his enemies." Do you remember in Isaiah chapter 9, he says, Jesus is the wonderful counselor, the mighty God concept that comes out of Psalm 50, verses 1 through 6. He comes forth as a mighty man. Now, I want you to keep your place here and go to Psalms. I'm going to have you read some verses. Psalms chapter 50. I really want to put this on your mind. Again, there's more ink, there's more known or written about this topic, tribulation time period, where he comes as a man of war, than there is on any other topic in the Bible. Psalm chapter 50, let me read you verses 1 through 6. "The mighty God, even the Lord, hath spoken, and called the earth from the rising of the sun unto the going down thereof. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God hath shined. Our God shall come and shall not keep silence. A fire shall devour before him, and it shall be very tempestuous round about him. He shall call to the heavens from above and to the earth, that he may judge his people. Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice, and the heavens shall declare his righteousness, for God is judge himself, Selah." Now, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 8, I read it earlier, "In flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God, and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ." Remember, do you remember me talking about the Lord will come down, he'll teach people, he taught people, and he kept on getting negativity from the leaders of Israel. You know, they ended up killing them, but he'll go to a certain point, and then he'll say, "Okay, that's over with. Now I'm going on to the next phase." The people that happens, they just stay angry. They don't want anything to do with the Lord. When they die, they go to hell. And well, let's read some more verses here. Psalm 24, verse 8. Now I'm going to show you something in Exodus in a little bit here. 24, verse 8. This is about taking vengeance when he comes back. It says, "Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle." Okay. Psalm 83. Let me read you 9 through the end. Psalm 83, verse 9 through verse 18, I'm sorry. "Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kison, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb, like Zeb, yea, all their princes at Zebah and as Zalmunna. O my God, make them like a wheel, as the stubble before the wind. As the fire burneth wood, and as the flame settleth the mountains on fire, so persecute them with thy tempest, the flaming fire, and make them afraid with thy storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish. That men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. His focus will be on the earth then. Look at Psalm 97. Now let me read you verse 3. Now God, we're talking about 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. This is what's going on. He's talking about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, what Paul is talking about. Verse 3, a fire goeth before him, and burneth up his enemies round about. Now turn to Isaiah chapter 66. Isaiah chapter 66. And look at verse 15. I'm breaking right into the context here. Isaiah 66, verse 15. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. Now, who remembers what the last verse in Hebrews chapter 12 says, verse 29? I know you got it in the tip of your tongues. It says, our God is a consuming fire. Does Paul ever say anything like that? Do you think Paul is the author of Hebrews? Guess where that verse is quoted from? Go to Deuteronomy. Hope you're still hanging on to Exodus. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 24. Now remember, Hebrews 12:29 says, for our God is a consuming fire. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 8-9 is talking about this flaming fire. I just read you about the flaming fire coming out of the Lord's mouth. For the Lord thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. Now go back to Exodus chapter 15. I want to show you something here. Let me start at verse 3. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains are also drowned in the Red Sea. So we know what was going on. They left Egypt. They spoiled the Egyptians. The Egyptians gave them jewels to get out of here because of all the plagues they were having. They go into the desert, and they come to the Red Sea, and Pharaoh had changed his mind by that time, and he came after them with his chariots and his soldiers, and they drowned in the sea. The depths have covered them, and they sank into the bottom as a stone. No, notice it says into, but not on. Is there a difference between into and on? Yeah, there is. What washed ashore? The bodies. There's a joke out there that says, what kind of shampoo does Israel use? Head and Shoulders, you know? The bodies. But they went down into the bottom. They sank into the bottom. The way I understand this is that there was a spot in the Red Sea that was open where dead souls went. So that became congealed when they went across on dry ground. Then when they took the waters again and drowned them all, their bodies went on shore, their souls went to hell. Let me see here. That's just something to notice. What happened to the pigs in the book of Mark? They had all those spirits in them. They ran into the water, didn't they? So there's a spot in the Red Sea, and Debbie and I have been talking about, well, there's going to be no more sea in the end. But you see Leviathan in there and all these, things. What sea is it? The Mediterranean Sea? I'm looking up on the internet trying to find it. Is it the Red Sea? I'm not sure about that yet. But look at verse 12, if you're still in Exodus 15. Thou stretchest out thy right hand, and the earth swallowed them. So their souls went down to hell. What does it say in Luke 16 about the man in hell? He looked across a great gulf, and there was that guy, the beggar there in Abraham's bosom, and he was in hell. He said, go up and tell my brothers about these. No, you can't do that. They had their chance. You can't go back up there and warn them. By the time the world gets to this point, and we're quickly, it seems like things are picking up quite a bit. People are always asking me about the rapture. We don't know when it's going to happen. It's imminent, but it could happen any time or another 100 years from now. I don't know. And we're not supposed to know, I believe. Let me see. On your outline here, Isaiah 42, verse 14. He says, I have long time holden my peace. I have been still and refrained myself. Now will I cry like a travailing woman. I will destroy and devour at once. And he comes back in flaming fire, taking vengeance. And he comes to judge and make war. That's in Revelation 19:11. The complete opposite of grace and peace and mercy. Let me say that again. Paul's words in the first chapter of all his epistles are grace and peace, and in the pastoral epistles he had the word mercy. Because I guess maybe people preaching need a little more mercy than other people. I don't know. But the point is, it's grace and peace. It's not judgment and war. It's not our God as a consuming fire. You can't lose your salvation. And that's what people balk at when they don't understand the Bible dispensationally. You miss a lot. Go to Zechariah chapter 14. Zechariah chapter 14. I'll get there in a minute. Verses 1 and 2. Well, I already hit it on here. I made you go anyway, but that's all right. It's good work. Behold, the day of the Lord, as in the day of battle, I have the title. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Now notice, this is future, not past. In the ages to come, Christ references Luke 21, verse 24, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations. He's talking about Israel now, in captivity. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now, what does Romans 11:25 say about this? Blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of Israel become in. One has to do with the Gentile, time of the Gentiles be fulfilled, and Romans 11 has to do with the fullness of the Gentiles. What does that do to your brains? It's going to end someday, the dispensation of grace. We've already been in it almost 2,000 years. It makes sense, right, scripturally? It does. the time of the Gentiles, the fullness of the Gentiles. Now, this will be this time period for Israel that is right in the middle of the 70th week of Daniel, when the days of vengeance and of wrath are upon this people. Zechariah 14, verse 3. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. Then, after all that happens, it's going to happen, the Lord shall go forth. I just read this to you in Isaiah 42, verse 13. Up on your paper here. Zechariah 14, 9. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth, and that day there shall be one Lord, and his name one. In other words, this is in connection with him coming back, taking vengeance on his enemies, going into Jerusalem, and setting up his kingdom. As he fights in the day of battle. Why? Why are we supposed to know this? Well, the biggest reason is that we're not going to go through this prophesied time of wrath. Does that make us any better than anybody else? No. I'm better than nobody. But it makes us a little wiser in understanding God's words. And when you understand his words like Paul wants us to, and as Christ wants us to, you can give comfort to people with just some words from the Bible. What is the only thing really that truly makes you happy, other than holding a 2-month-old baby and sheep ruffles on your shirt, or something like that, which I've had done many times. My mother never breastfed. I held a bottle all the time, with the babies there. But what happens? This information, or why does this happen, is what takes you back to the books of Exodus and Numbers. What does this mean? Because in these books, as in the day of battle, was back in the books of Exodus and Numbers, verses like these are why we say those things are just a dress rehearsal for what is coming. Also seen in the Gospels, Matthew 24, 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time. Nobody has ever experienced this. It's going to happen. It's going to be worse than anything else ever happened in the world. Can you wrap your mind around that? No, nor shall ever be. Great tribulation. He says tribulation, then great tribulation. There's the first and second half of that tribulation. It's the 70th week of Daniel. It's 7 years long. It's a subject of prophecy, the result of God coming down, bringing his kingdom down on earth and ruling and reigning. You see that in Daniel 2:44. Okay. Song of Moses. So when Israel comes out of Egypt, they go across the Red Sea. When they get across the Red Sea, they sing a song to celebrate. They sang this song in Exodus 15:1 because of what the two previous verses said. Let me go back there in Exodus 14. Let me read this to you. Exodus 14, the last two verses, verse 30. Let me start at verse 29. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. 30 and 31. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians, and his people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. This horse and rider concept gets picked up in the book of John, by John in Revelation chapter 6, where there is the first 4 seals in the 70th week. And I know this is pretty heavy stuff, okay, but it's still going to happen. Exodus 15:2. The Lord is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God. I will prepare him an habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. Israel now understands what they needed to do. They needed to go into Palestine, the promised land, and prepare a place for God to put his throne. Jerusalem, if you put the mass together on a map, the whole mass of the earth, Jerusalem would be dead center. That's his command post. Exodus 15, verses 17 and 18. It says, Thou shalt bring them in and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance, in the place, O Lord, which thou hast made for thee to dwell in the sanctuary, O Lord, which thy hands have established. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. So this needed to be done to become a nation, because they became a nation on that day when they came across the Red Sea. As they came across the Red Sea, they stand on that new life side of the Red Sea. They knew exactly who they were and why they had been formed for, what they had been formed for. They were his kingdom nation. Their purpose was to go into that land and prepare a sanctuary where the Lord himself could reign from, establish his government. This is what Exodus 15:2 says. Okay? Verse 3 says, the Lord is a man of war, and the Lord is his name. Now, is he a man of war today? Does Paul ever say anything about the Lord being a man of war? No. What Paul does in 1 Corinthians 10 says, these things are written for our admonition. Because when they left Egypt and he went out in the desert, they condemned, criticized, and complained because they didn't get what they wanted instantaneously. The Lord gave them water, gave them food, he gave them so much it was coming out of their nostrils because he was angry for their lack of believing. Didn't the Lord just do all these things for you? The water comes out of the rock and all that, quail coming down, and you still don't believe? You still murmur, and you still think you're going to be better back in Egypt with the garlic and onions and all the things like that? As slaves? They weren't, let's say, appreciative. Oftentimes, when you read back there in these passages, and especially when you get into the prophets, they will say, when the Messiah comes, when the kingdom comes, when he does this, it's going to be like he did that back there, okay? We have these things in Exodus, in Numbers, more, but in this time, in the ages to come, it's going to be done again, only worse. The difference is that these prophecies will be future with a view to the end and much worse. This information alone proves dispensational study, because not all the promised land is occupied by Israel. You've got Gaza, you've got the West Bank, we learned just last week. So the land that God gave to Israel is delineated in the Old Testament. Have they ever held the entire piece of land? Not that I know of. Is that wrong? I mean, didn't the Lord tell them to do it? They got busy with other things and didn't do it? Why did he give them so many judges? Why did he put them under bondage and so many times? Revelation 1:6 says, and hath made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. See something there? Jesus Christ is called God. That's another verse you can use. Hebrews 1:8 is another one. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. This is not true today. The Bible, after this time period comes, passes away, there's 9 more epistles in your Bible, Hebrews to Revelation, to talk about what God's going to do in that prophetically prophesied end time judgment. And that's what we've been reading about. Let me see. Go to Exodus 19. I'm here. Let me just read it for real quick. Verse 6. And it says, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And we'll go back to verse 5. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar people, or treasure unto me above all people. Now that's the if-then equation of the law. If you do this, you're going to get this. Okay? If you don't do this, you're going to get this. And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Is Israel a kingdom of priests today and holy nation? We all know the answer to that. If the Bible is your final authority, and you know the King James, the King James Bible is the right one for English-speaking people, what do we know? We know things that are in the future. We didn't predict them. We read about them in the Bible. What does that do to people you talk to a lot? Well, sometimes when you're talking to people, you know, when you witness, you don't want to offend them. Try like the Dickens not to do that. But when you read verses that talk about this time period, and it says we're not going to be in that wrath, in First Thessalonians says about that, we're not children of the night, we're children of the day. And they get angry. That shouldn't make you angry. That should make you realize that if you preach the truth today, you're going to get a lot of so-called Christians upset. And I'm not saying they're not saved. I'm glad they're saved if they're saved. If they're not saved, you have to believe that Christ died for your sins, shed his blood, was buried, and rose again the third day. We're not trying to get anybody angry, but they do get angry. That's the reality of the time we're living, and it's getting worse as I speak, because everything's just up in the air. What's right is wrong, what's wrong is right, Up is down, black is white, and white is black. It's crazy. The things that are going on right now are just totally illogical. And it's building, and we live in this time period. We are prepared because we know something about life after death. We know there's only 2 places you go. And there's no purgatory or limbo, okay? There's only a heaven and a hell. And you make the choice before you die. That's why we want to get this message to everybody we can, because we are all held deserving, but for the fact that we understand what Paul says. Peter, James, and John understood what Paul says. They acknowledged him that he was the guy for today. And in this section of Romans through Philemon, it's the gospel of the grace of God. It's not the gospel of the kingdom. It's the gospel of the grace of God. God is being graceful today, not seeing anybody different, just the lost and saved, as Rick said. The 2 kinds of people, lost and saved. Not white or black, lost and saved. So the kingdom of priests, if you go to Isaiah 61, you're going to see it again. Isaiah 61. And look at Isaiah 61, verse 6. But ye shall be, by the way, Exodus 19 is right before they give the Ten Commandments, which is in Exodus 20. So he says, and they said to the Lord, everything you say we'll do. And we know the difference. Isaiah 61:6, but ye shall be named the priests of the Lord, and men shall call you the ministers of our God. Ye shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in their glory shall ye boast yourselves. You know what some people do to these verses like this? They take them out of context and they spin a web of deceit and lies. And try to make you feel that you're wanting for something when we know God has supplied all our need, singular, as Rick was talking about. We know that. Go to Zechariah chapter 8. This priest and kingdom, I really want you, and holy nation. Israel is about as holy as the rest of the world today. Zechariah chapter 8, let me read you verses 22 and 23. Last two verses. Zechariah 8:22. Yea, many people and strong nations shall come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem, and to pray before the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all the languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. Are we able to do that today? Well, you can go there and do that, but it's the wrong time period. It isn't true. If they're saved like we are by the gospel of grace, they're saved, but not the whole nation. It's an individual thing that you have to do, which is why we come here and we meet, we learn about this, and we try our best. Go to 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 2, I'm sorry. 1 Peter 2. And let me read you verses 9 and 10. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 and 10. And it says, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people. By the way, we're a peculiar people too, in a different way. That ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into this marvelous light. Doesn't it say in 1 Thessalonians 5, we are children of the light, not of the day or night? We're children of the day, of the light, not of the night? It does. Which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which hath not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. That's interesting. Show you the difference. Look at the next verse here in 11. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. Here's a verse that was written to the Jews. Having your conversation honest among the Gentiles. He's talking to the Jews. When you talk to the Gentiles, here's how you should do it. This is in the ages to come now. How is a Gentile going to get to heaven in that time period? By believing a God-filled Jew, by hanging under the skirt of the Jew that has the wisdom and knowledge. Not by the gospel of grace. That time period is over with. Having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or it keeps on going. But the point is, he's making a contrast. Here's the Gentiles, here's you guys now. You guys know some truth. Not all of them, but they know some truth. Hang on to the skirt of them. Listen to the Jews that understand what's going on. And they don't today. And if you go back to Hebrews chapter 1, verse 8, here's another verse where God the Father calls his Son God. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 8, which says, "But unto thy Son, he saith, thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom." You see that back in Psalm 45. God knows ultimately what he's going to do. God knows what he's going to do. He will set up some things in time past that are a pattern of that. Like those wars back in Exodus, Numbers, these battles. Well, again, that's kind of like a dress rehearsal for what's going to happen over here in this time period in the ages to come. You can look back and see how the things he did in the past will fit the things he will do in the future. Hebrews to Revelation. He will keep his promise to Israel. They will occupy the entire promised land, and they will be a nation of kings and priests and a holy nation. Hang on to the skirt of a Jew. They know the truth. Ephesians 2, 6 and 7. "And hath raised us up together and made us sit in heavenly places in Christ Jesus, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace in his kindness toward us through Christ Jesus." You know what verse 6 is? Let me show you. Verse 6 can tie right into Revelation 12:12. In Revelation 12, God finishes the war with Satan in the heavens, and he comes down here. Satan and his angels come down here, not willingly, but they come down here. And in Revelation 12:12, the only verse that could possibly apply to us, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time." Verse 7, the ages to come, it's the only time it's used in the Bible. It means to come upon, to overtake, to be future. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 10 says, "And to wait for his Son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, even Jesus, which delivered us from the wrath to come." That's the ages to come. We're delivered from that wrath to come. It's only used one time. This is one of those things that the church, the body of Christ, is saved from this prophesied wrath. This is one of those things that tells you the Bible is written by God and not man. It may have been 66 books and 40 plus authors, but the reality says the one who wrote Exodus, Numbers, and Genesis back there, and the one who orchestrated these events wasn't bound by time, because he knew what the future was going to be. He wants this to come to an end at some time. When you build something, you paint a room or something, you prep it out, you paint it, doesn't it look great? Well, if you've done it, you patched all the holes and fixed all the cracks and all that and mortared, and, then you paint it. Well, it's a beauty. I think it lasts longer for men that time, but women get upset a little quicker, I think. I want to change this, I want to change that, Well, it's only been there 30 years, what about 30 more? They want to change these things. Well, I'm talking about my own situation here, but why can't they be satisfied? Like I say, you got to keep the humor. I want you to see, go back to Isaiah 42. I know I'm making you do a lot of work today. Good. You'll be blessed by these verses, all the verses here. Get Isaiah 42 and Isaiah 45. In Isaiah 42, It says in verse 9, let me start in verse 8. I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. That's somebody that knows what's going to happen before it happens. Look at chapter 45 and verse 45 and verse 21. Tell ye and bring them near, yea, let them take counsel together. Who hath declared this from ancient time? Who hath told it from that time? Have not I the Lord? And there is no God else besides me, a just God and a Savior? There is none beside me. Not only is this predictive prophecy a proof of the Scripture, but it is a scientific, mathematical, statistical demonstration of the accuracy, authority, and veracity of the Scriptures, to the place that not to believe in the Word of God is absurd. I say this because I want you to look at Genesis 1 and Genesis 1 and Jeremiah 4. What does it say between Genesis 1 and 2? Let me go back there. Verse first is, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. Now, verse 2 says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. There's the waters again. But the Lord wouldn't make anything that's void and dark, okay, without form. But then, in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23, now that's at the beginning of our Bible here. Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23. I want you to get this real good. Well, I'm going to start at verse 22. For my people is foolish, they have not known me, they are sottish children, and they have none understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. Doesn't Genesis 1:2 say something like that? Does this refer back to Genesis 1:2? What do you think? How many people think it refers back to Genesis 1:2? Okay, it doesn't. It's a reference to the end time at the second coming of Christ, when he comes to destroy the Antichrist. There's two Hebrew words, bohu and tohu. One's bohu, one's tohu, but I can't remember which one right now for those two verses. But it's about the end time. He has a blueprint. He wants to build this thing, and he wants to come to an end where he can sit back and enjoy it sometime. When you get your house remodeled, isn't that the feeling? You're waiting for the end to happen. Christ has interrupted that time period for 2,000 years and offers salvation as a free gift. That's the biggest news and the best news you can have for anybody today on the planet. Genesis 1 and 2 recount creation. Genesis 1 gives you an overview. Genesis 2 goes back basically and picks up the fifth day man is made. You have information written in outline form in Genesis. There is more in Job and Isaiah than there is in Genesis about creation itself. And the people Moses is writing to in Genesis already know a lot about it. It's not like you, like us. When we come to it, that's the first thing we know. But it's put in the Bible on the first page so that when you start reading the Bible, you know where the universe came from, And you know not just that it came from there, but that it came with a purpose. When God created, he created with a plan. You see a specific kind of procedure back here that when you begin to study, you see this procedure in creation has the end in view from the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. If you can get that much of the Bible, you've got everything else. In the beginning, but there's going to be an end. This here is the end. We're over here. 9 more epistles talks about the end time, when God has his kingdom on the earth. Something had to start somewhere. It hadn't already been here. So where did it come from? You can get philosophical. You can argue the Big Bang, or you can argue this, that, and other stuff. But the bottom line is that, where did it come from? What was the first original cause? Whatever you decide that it came from, that's going to be from the God of our Bible. Because there is someone outside of creation that kick-started creation. And when he created the universe, he created the heaven and the earth, and he gives reasons why he did this. Proverbs 3, verses 19 and 20. The Lord by his wisdom had founded the earth, by understanding hath he established heavens. Here's wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. By knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. I just want you to see that it's by wisdom and knowledge and understanding that God set up the universe the way he did. In other words, he stepped out and said, let it be. He had a plan. When you go build something, you have an architectural blueprint, a plan, or a blueprint of some kind. You have a model in your mind what it's going to look like at the end. God had the end in mind. What it was going to look like at the end of the day. He had a plan. Everything he did was in line with producing the plan. I'm going to stop there. I want to ask you a question. I have something else prepared that goes in a little more detail about the air and the coming and all that. Would you like to hear that next week? Pardon me? More than that. But yeah. Okay. It might, some of them pretty heavy duty, but you can keep it as a reference because I've done a lot of work on it. And then we'll continue with this, okay? Thank you, Lord, for this time in your word, and I just pray it just falls on everybody who hears in the right way and they get saved. Amen.